Yeah, so I'm going to be using just a Wacom tablet here to just like walk you through like my plan for today and maybe for just like another day if this takes too long. But at a high level, like what I'm interested in today is sort of diving deep into one example of building a 3D model. So I'm following a tutorial by this guy called Andrew Price. Just pick black. I'm following this tutorial by this guy called Andrew Price. He has a nice Twitter, and sort of he has like he goes by this character called Blender Guru on YouTube, where he discusses like various stuff related to Blender. So what's Blender? So Blender is it's a whole bunch of stuff, but at a high level, it's uh, 3D modeling software plus animation. But there's sort of like a bunch of different pieces here. So the first off, like when we talk about 3D modeling, like you may think like, well, Mark, like why the hell do you care about this? Like you're in machine learning, you're in games, like why does this matter to you? And so what I sort of find interesting about 3D modeling, like in general, is that it has like so many different applications. So for example, like let's say you can come in and you can say, okay, well, I want to make something for a game, and this can be in 2D or 3D. The reason why it works for either is because if you make a 3D object but then view it like straight up, then it looks like it's 2D. So think of games like Super Smash Brothers, for example. Like even though it looks 2D, it's actually a 3D game, and so you don't need to actually paint textures. Like you can just create a 3D model and then make like a game in whatever perspective you want. Other applications are stuff like animation. So think like you're making something like a Pixar movie. Well, you could do a full movie like that in Blender, and if in fact there's many movies made in Blender on YouTube, so you can sort of check out like how complex they get, and that then gives you some sense of like what you can do with this stuff. So another application, for example, is like architecture. So you may have seen some like photorealistic renderings of stuff, and then when you'll see it, like they'll make like this cool looking apartment somewhere. A lot of these are just entirely computer generated. But again, like what's sort of interesting about this is again like this is sort of a bang for your buck kind of skill set. Oh hey Hoda, nice to see you in chat. So again, like I said here, so when it comes to games 2D or 3D, I also want to include AR and VR. Well, the reason that's the case is because it's a 3D object can sort of live in any environment, and AR and VR is just basically a specific kind of camera. And then the last one I'd like to mention is VFX. So let's say, a lot of people now are stuck at home and they're streaming. So if you want to make like a nice visual effect, to like sort of I don't know, make cool explosions, make cool sounds or whatever, you can make all of these stuff in Blender. You want to make a UFO landing somewhere and do some sort of viral video or whatever, you can create those 3D models in Blender. And so my overall point, like the reason I'm kind of going through all of this is to kind of tell you that like if you learn 3D modeling, it's sort of like a bang for your buck skill set. Because you can just do so much with it. Like, I mean, it does seem very likely that, where, like if anything, games are going to be more popular, animations are going to be more popular. If anything, with stuff like COVID, like we're probably going to be at home forever at this point. And so, like, it makes sense that more people are going to be doing this stuff. And sort of my intention here is that, like, I have, like, sort of two audiences in mind for this. So the first is people where, maybe you're an artist, but you haven't done 3D. Like, I want you to go away from this thinking, like, okay, maybe this isn't too hard. But I also want you to think like if you're more someone who leans more on the programming side of things and you haven't done anything artsy, well, like the way it works in Blender is fairly mathy. Like maybe you won't do something as beautiful as an artist would, but you can actually get pretty far. And that's actually me. Like, I'm not an artist, but like given that I don't have an artistic eye, like I do like this idea of modeling stuff mathematically. And so, like I said, we're going to be going over this tutorial by Andrew Price. And so there's a few stuff we're going to be covering. So first off here, you'll see. I'm just going to zoom in. It's not working. So we're going to be going over the user interface for Blender. Oh, sorry. I want to mention one quick thing. Like why Blender? Like, so like let's go here. Yeah, so why Blender? Well, the main reason is it's actually free. And that in of itself isn't a good reason when you think about it, because like maybe some software will save you more time. But just for perspective, like other 3D software, like Maya, for example, costs like around like 2K a year. But but this also matters because the fact that Blender is free means there's loads of tutorials, including this series by Blender Guru that we're going to be going over today. Blender Guru, for example. And you can actually do very powerful stuff with it. And so the main con of Blender, though, like, so this is sort of the benefits. The main con is the UI is opaque. Like it's lots of keyboard shortcuts. Nothing really feels like it makes a lot of sense. Which means that, like, you know, if you're just starting out and you're like, oh, I want to do Blender for something, then you're gonna, you know, usually be overwhelmed and think like this kind of sucks. But part of this tutorial is that I want this to be simpler for you. Like I want you to enjoy this part more. So let's sort of take a step back now. So today we're gonna, I think, try to get to level 3 here. So what does this involve, right? So in level 1, we have like the UI. So this is just like, how does everything work in Blender? We have modeling. So modeling is how you create a 3D mesh. So basically the shape of the object. So in this case, a donut, or like in more mathematical terms, like this is called a torus. Then we're gonna discuss sculpting. Sculpting, yeah. So in sculpting, like, you can think of this sort of like clay, where you like morph an object to make it give a certain specific shape. So here specifically, we're going to use sculpting to do this like line here in the middle. You can see here. So sort of it helps make stuff more realistic. The next thing we're going to discuss is materials. So the reason materials are interesting is that usually, like, when you're drawing something, like, you think in terms of colors, but like, let's say if something is glass versus versus like matte, etc. These reflect light in different ways, right? So, and if it reflects light in different ways, it's going to look different. And so instead of you like trying to think about how you can make photorealistic wood, you can sort of use a lot of the materials that Blender has. So, and the last one is like, so lighting sort of, I think is sort of similar here. Like, we'll just discuss roughly the basics of how light works and how it bounces off materials. So this is level 1. Why am I writing in this bendy way? Okay, level 2. So in level 2, we're gonna talk about like how to texture stuff procedurally. So as you can see here, like in this donut, like there's all of these flakes here. Well, it's going to be very tedious if we actually want to come in and draw each of these. Similarly here for the bread, you can see all sorts of bumps here. Well, again, this would take like way too long to actually make by hand. So we're going to, use a computer to make this like more seamless. And we're also going to discuss like techniques like UV unwrapping that'll let us like basically turn, like draw on a 2D picture and then texture a 3D object with it. And I don't think we're going to have time for level 4. So in level 3, I want to discuss like transparency and precision modeling. So, just because I think transparency is cool, like it's sort of hard to do it by hand. And precision modeling is basically, like, again, one interesting, actually, maybe this made me think, like, industrial design. It's one more application of 3D modeling and 3D printing. And the reason I remember this when I started talking about precision modeling is basically you want the size of objects to be realistic. Like, let's say if we want to make a donut, then the donut can't have a radius of more than 5 centimeters, for example, because then the diameter would be 10 centimeters. Like, let's say then that's a donut that's roughly the size of my hand or something, or maybe a bit smaller. But in general, like, that's how we want to think of stuff, because if we make sure that everything has the real dimensions, then if you look online, like, just the rough dimensions for something, then when you're building a scene, everything will be coherent. Like, you can build a full kitchen, a countertop, like a plate, and then everything will sort of look realistic, as opposed to making like a 2-meter long, plate, and then, zooming out so that it looks small. Like, just give it the right shape. So yeah, I mean, I think without further ado, we can actually get started. And I hope like this sort of the scope is clear and interesting to everyone. All right, let me just get rid of this tablet. All right. So the first thing I want to show you here is, let me fix the mic here. So I'm gonna go to Blender. So this is what Blender looks like, and you can just like it's free, like I said. So if you download Blender here, you can just go online, go to blender.org, because that's only because blender.com is taken by actual Blenders. And you just download it, and it's free, right? So you just come in, and then they'll show you some cool stuff, like, okay, well, here's some movies, and this is like examples of like really nice stuff that people have made in Blender. Like, I don't know how to make stuff like this yet, but I'm hoping that like one of you watching who's more on the like who has like better artistic sensibilities than me can actually make something like this and help me make a beautiful game. And so you can see here, like, like you can sculpt stuff, for example, here, like this is sort of a house, and you can sort of get some sense of how this would work. And then like also like we talked about VFX, which is like, let's say you want to do stuff like, track stuff, make some sort of cool viral video where you're running in the middle of traffic. You could do all of the above. And there's also like, I think this is more recent, but people have started making like 2D animations in Blender. Again, like, yeah, you could, there's no reason you wouldn't be able to, because you can still come in and give skeletons to stuff. Like, we're not going to talk about skinning for this episode, but it's just, just so you know, it's something you can do, and it's like fairly straightforward to do in Blender. So yeah, I mean, let's sort of, I think, get some sense of what the interface looks like. So when you first come in, you're going to notice like here you have like this view, which like shows like all the objects that you're looking at. So this panel here has like some information and metadata related to this. So let's say here it'll have like the XYZ coordinates. So if I change this, it's going to move it around. I can rotate it. So basically all of the settings that you can imagine on an object will be here. And then here we're going to have like all the objects in our scene. So let's see, what do we have in a scene? We have a camera. So the camera is looking here. Right, so then that means if you like, let's say, so render is basically what you do when you're done. So the camera is going to be looking at this from this perspective. And you'll notice how there's like some interesting shading here, right? So like here it's dark, and here it's lit up. So that's because we actually have a light. So the light is coming here, right? So then this is a point light. It's going to shine here, and then this is going to be a dark spot. So we capture the dark spot, but then the lit part is lit, and it's going to show up. So again, like you don't, like what's nice about Blender is that you don't need to yourself think about how light works. Actually, you kind of do, because you still need to decide where you want the light to be. But it sort of does a lot of nice things for you. So let's see, just some basic commands, I think. So let's say in Blender in general, like everything, a lot of stuff is keyboard based. So if you hold G for grab, like this is going to move stuff. So I can move this box, and if I let it go. But if I tap G and then say push X, then I'm only going to move it along the X axis. So this is a lot more precise, because just me doing it manually will be like very fiddly. Same thing, if I push Y, it's going to move things along the Y axis, and if I push Z, it's going to move it along the Z axis. But the nice thing is at least these shortcuts are consistent. So like another shortcut is, for example, called scale. So if you push S, it's going to start scaling the object, and you can see wait, let me move where my face is. I think I'm missing some stuff here. Myself smaller a bit. All right, so yeah, sorry about that. So the reason I moved my face is because I wanted to show you here the settings on the right. So when I scale this up and down, like you can sort of see it here changing to the right. But obviously, like moving stuff graphically is easier. So then you can also rotate. So if I push R, then it's going to rotate stuff. But similarly, like if I push R, then push X, then I'm only going to rotate along the X axis. If I push Y, I'll only rotate it along the Y axis. And if I push Z, I'll only rotate it around the axis. So another very common command, for example, is Shift D, so for duplicate. So if I duplicate this object and let's say put it here, Then, you know, I can hide it to not show it in the scene right now. So you see here how it like, gets grayed out. So that means it's no longer active. And yeah, and so like another useful thing is like, let's say we grab this and put it all the way here. Well, you may think like, well, like I want to, you know, I want to move to this other place. So a lot of movement in Blender sort of works in two ways. So you have the middle mouse button on the mouse. So you rotate. So I will say by there for Blender, you probably need a mouse. You can do everything on a tablet or a laptop if you want to, but I think a mouse will be a lot better. So if I use the middle mouse, like you can see here, I can rotate about any of these axes. And if I shift and middle mouse button, then I can sort of pan and sort of claw my way to those other locations. But this is very fiddly. So what I usually do is I go to the number pad and I push dot, and then this brings the camera focused on the object that I want to go to. So let's say I click here. So I zoom out, and then I'm like, okay, well, actually what I want to do is I want to go here. So I would click dot and I go here. So let's get started on the donut. So I'm going to delete all of this. Actually, no. So I also deleted the light and the camera, which I don't want to do. So if you click Shift A, so this lets you add stuff in Blender. So we're going to add a torus. So I have a torus now. But, you know, this doesn't look like a donut so far. It looks very hollow. So we can fix this with the minor and the major radius. So let's say I want the major radius to be so 0.05 meters. And then I want this to be 0.025. So if you zoom in, so again, I'm using Shift and middle mouse. Yo, hey Pseudomaze, nice to see you. Good morning. So if I click here on, so I'm using my middle mouse button to move around the axis, and then if I like I just use the scroll wheel to zoom in, and you can see this sort of looks a bit more reasonable so far, right? So this sort of I guess looks like a donut. But how do we really make this work? Like, I mean, so far you'll notice a few things. Like one, it doesn't look like a donut because it has all these like ragged edges. It's like it also like, you know, doesn't have anything like icing. It doesn't have a color. So it's like, you know, a far cry from actually being a donut at this point. So how do we make this work? So the first thing we're gonna do, let's see, what do we want to do first? I mean, yeah, let's see what Andrew did, I think. Here. So the modeling.
This video is sponsored by Polygon.
So like I already went through level 1 already. So I'm just trying to remember some of the details. Let's see, so here.
The size of these
Okay, yeah. So the first thing you'll notice is as well is that the donut is very like it's stiff. It looks like a perfect mathematical object. And the idea that like no one's ever going to be able to actually make a donut look like this. So if you try to do a 3D render of something like this, it is going to look fake. And so let me just show you quickly like what a donut looks like. So you'll notice, for example, how here like it has all these imperfections, right? Like the donut comes in, it has a crease here. It's like sort of bumpy here and bumpy on some other sides. So all sorts of imperfections. So how do we do some of these? So in Blender, there's sort of two main modes. So there's what's called the object mode, and then there's edit mode. So the edit mode shows you the actual mesh. So you'll see here like this sort of sequence of vertices, so like nodes and then edges, like represent like the 3D, what the 3D object actually is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in and then we're gonna actually select some of these vertices, and we're gonna try to move them. So similarly as you would move an object, you can move vertices if you push G. So look, so I'm gonna push G, but you'll notice like one thing is that like this doesn't look very natural. Like it just sort of pulled the edges without pulling its neighboring edges. But what I want to do is that when I actually want to pull these edges, I want to make sure that they also deform its neighbor so that it looks like a realistic like morph. So what we're going to do is there's a setting here called proportional editing. The shortcut is O. So we're going to do the same thing. And then when I push G, wait, so first I need to scroll down to only affect, yeah, here. And then you'll notice here, okay, now I can start morphing it. Okay, so first off, I hate this camera angle, so let me get back. Here, like this. Okay, let's say we're here, right? Okay, again. So I'm gonna push G, and I'm gonna start. So first off, make sure proportional editing is on, and then when I do this, you'll see like now I can start deforming it to make it look a bit more real. So I'm gonna do this in a bunch of different locations. So I'll do this here. I'll lump it here. Sorry, this is too much. Okay, then I'm gonna select here the edges and again lump them up like this. So the idea is I actually don't want the deformations to be too regular, because then again it looks like it's computer generated. It doesn't look like it's a real donut. So it's actually fine to just pick it in whatever random locations, and it's actually why I'm not following Andrew's tutorial to the letter here. All right, so let's see. How does our donut look like so far? Okay, so here, by the way, I'm pushing the numpad. So if you push 1, for example, then you can see the object like facing like this. You know, if you push 5, I'll do it at an angle. So this is very useful. And then 0 will show you what it looks like in the render screen, so where the camera is. So let's just do a bit more of this. Like, I mean, this is a highly morphed donut, but it's okay. I don't think it matters that much. So we're just gonna keep making these imperfections. Maybe a couple more. A couple more here. So I'm shift middle mouse dragging. So again here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to push this a bit. And then let's say I'll do the same thing here. So by the way, the circle determines the radius at which other parts of the other vertices of the donut are manipulated. So that's why there's a radius there. And that's why I had to scroll down to get it initially. So, okay, so we have this so far. So let's keep doing this. How do I feel about my donuts? Okay, where is it? All right, okay. So, I mean, here it's a bit very morphed, but it's okay. Let's keep doing this. Maybe, yeah, like this. Like, make it fluffy. Push this out a bit here. And then I'm going to select these vertices and then push this out a bit here. All right, great. I mean, this doesn't look amazing, but it looks a bit more super greasy donut. My favorite. Yeah, like definitely. This is like you can feel the fat dripping. Yeah, it's definitely homemade. So what we'll make sure to do is that like once we're texturing the bread, we want to make sure like even grease, when you think of it as an effect, it's basically like a shininess on the layer, and so this happens when. So this happens when light is penetrating the object. So that I'll talk about like a bit later. So let's say I've come in here and then I'll do the same thing. Okay, so I think this is enough of the morphing. So let's just see what Andrew ended up doing. So I think he does the subsurface circular thing.
It's gonna basically.
Okay, yeah. So the other thing is that like, okay, so once you have a mesh. So we said like a mesh is this sort of like sequence of vertices and edges, and we've sort of moved them a bit in space. But we want this to look like an actual donut. Like I don't want like I'm not making a polygonal donut. I actually want to make a photorealistic donut. So I'm going to basically do an effect called Subsurface Circular that's going to smooth out everything. So it's here. If you go to the Modifiers tab here, and here it's called Subdivision Surface. And so when I do it, it doesn't look like much happened. But if I click Tab, you'll see, okay, well, this looks a lot more circular now. Like it still has like some of these edges because it's not like, so we can, let me just show you this. So like, let's say if I come in here and I increase the viewport, so it makes it even smoother. So what should a good value for this be? Well, typically you want it to be as small as possible, because while the object will be smoother, it'll be more difficult for you to work with because you're essentially doubling the number of vertices at each point. So it just depends, like, do you want this complexity now or do you want it later? So here, like, I'm just going to increase it slowly so you can see the difference. And so if we click tab, great, this looks kind of like a donut at this point, right? Okay, so what do we want to do now? This is, okay. So I just saved you, like, okay, so in 26 minutes, I was able to do, okay, 20 minutes of the original tutorial. Okay. I guess, though, I did explain more background, so it's all good.
I always go like, basically, if I was to increase viewport, it's doing another.
All right. So let's see. So what did he do now? So here I think he's gonna do the icing. Okay, yeah. So how do we do the icing? So first off, like, let's look at our donut from this side. So again, I'm shift clicking, so that lets me do this. And so what I want to do is I want to create a layer of icing here at the top. So basically, I want to grab this part and then put it on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit tab, so that way I can see the vertices. And then if I click select, this looks kind of weird, right? So if you go back here, it selected some of the stuff at the front, but it didn't select some of the stuff near the back. So thankfully, I think, as you may have expected, there is a setting for this called X-ray. Where is it? Yeah, here is Alt-Z. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and then I'm going to say, X-ray. So Alt-Z. Wait, huh? Okay. And then if I select this here. Oi. Whoa. Okay, it actually ended up selecting like the entire top. So it selected some other stuff that I don't want it to do. So let me just make sure I do this in a cleaner way. So again, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. And then does this work? I like morphed my donut so much that it's hard to do it in a clean way. Okay, yes, I think this is fine. Right, so okay. So as you may expect, now that we have the top, what I can do is I can hit Shift D, and you'll see like I've duplicated this part, and so this is gonna be basically our icing, so the layer that we put on top. So, but I don't actually want to move it. I just want to do this, Shift D, and then I want to put it directly on top of it. And then I also want to make sure, wait, why did it not create a new object for it? Okay, so it's still part of the same object, curiously enough, even though when I Shift D'd it shouldn't be. Let me think about this. Okay, how do you do it?
For duplicate. And when you do that, you'll notice immediately after that, it's duplicated it and it's now following your cursor by right-clicking. Either of those functions will cancel a movement and it will now snap it back to its original location. So it's duplicated and it's now resting on top of the donut. Part of it to be separate.
Okay, yeah, so we want to separate it. So separate. Where is it? S?
Key is P.
P. Separate.
Location. So it's duplicated and it's now resting on top of the donut. So straight after that, I want to immediately make it its own object. So to do that, the hotkey is P. P for...
Okay, let's do this one last time. So sometimes you need to have the hotkey selected immediately, or else the settings go away. So we're gonna come in here, and then again I'm gonna do this, and then Shift D. I'm gonna right click, and then I'm gonna push P, and then I'm gonna separate the selection. And so now you'll see here. So if I grab, where is it? Yeah, so now, because like the mesh is intersecting with the previous mesh. So let's just make sure I can select it. Actually, wait. So what I'll do is I'll make my life a bit easier in this way. Thanks, Happy. Okay. Okay. Do this one last time. Okay, so Shift, and we set P. We separate the selection. Nothing is selected. And then, okay, well, I can come in here actually, and we said before that I can move the XY location here somewhere. Yeah, so let's say Oi! Why is this moving that part though instead of... Can I select stuff here? Select, oh yeah. So if I select, and then I want to just increase the Z axis. For fuck's sake. X axis? No. Okay, so wait. So select, right? And then I want to change the... Why is it... Where is it? Oh, whoa. Why is my icing all the way there? Okay. Let's see. So go back to 1. Right, okay, great. So this is the thing I wanted. And then once this is selected, I want to move, like I want to say the y-axis. But this is not doing anything. Okay, that's fine. Oh, wait. It's completely gone now. Okay. Okay, okay. So I'll come in here. No. So like this. And then I'll hit Shift D. And then I'll right click and then push P. And I'll separate the selection. Right. So I'm just going to rename this so it's not as confusing. I think it's F2, yeah. So let's call this icing, and then instead of calling this Torus, we'll call it donut. Right, great. So now that we have the icing, what I'm gonna do is that, like, if you look at it here, the hell is this stuff on it? What the hell are these drawings? Like, I just got like... Okay, wait, how do I look at stuff from top down? I think this may just be an artifact of the rendering, if I'm not mistaken. But it's already obvious, like, it gave it its own 3D shape. And it already... What's also very weird about it is that it also, like, is sort of falling off automatically, even though I was going to come in and explicitly make the icing drip. It already sort of did that for me. So anyway, so we're going to go to the modifier properties in here. And so what we're going to do is something called Solidify. So basically Solidify comes in and sort of helps make sure the icing is, like, actually, like sort of a solid object. And you can see here it's sort of going into the mesh, but it's okay. Like, we're not going to end up seeing that. Okay. All right. So what else can we do here? So some other stuff we can do is, like, when it comes here, like what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to start editing this mesh. to make it like drip on the sides. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in and again I'm gonna select these guys, and you know you could potentially hold G, but what I actually want to do is instead of just pulling these two vertices, I want to create a new vertex. So let me show you what that'll look like. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to push E for extrude. And so then I'm going to do this. Similarly here, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to push in extrude. So it's going to drip. And so remember, the important thing here is not to make it too regular because like here, I don't like these. Can I delete these? Delete vertices. Oh yeah, okay, great. So like first off, I'm gonna make sure I start saving my progress. So donut icing. And so let's see what else can we fix here. So okay, we have some icing, we have some drip there. How about like at some points like we just have like a little drip, not too much, like just like a fat one here. And then let's keep going here. Okay. So let's say I come in here again and I'm gonna extrude. Oh no, so so it extrudes towards the camera. So if I'm looking at it from the top, it's gonna the icing is gonna come up like this, which is definitely not realistic. I don't know if you've ever eaten a donut like that. I haven't. So let's just make sure that like we're sort of facing down from the donut, just like in the camera. And so if I select these again and I extrude, you want a nice like fat dripping donut. All right, so first off, this is looking very regular, by the way. I realize now. So, but let's say it only is dripping on this side, and then the other side would be fine. Another thing to think about is the actual shape of the donut will determine how it's more likely going to spill the icing. So like you can see here on this part, it's really raised, so like you would expect it to flow down more there. I'm not gonna think about that too much because we'll just spend all day here. And so, what does he do after this?
Worse than
His looks a lot nicer, by the way. I will tell you this.
now we've got.
But to be fair, like I mean, Andrew Price has been doing Blender stuff for 18 years. I've been doing it for like a couple of months, I would say, and I only started to take it very seriously a couple of days ago.
Like half that because it's designed. Blender's designed to work for like large scale scenes.
All right, so move the view options. Yeah, how do they get this stuff? So if I go to icing, oh, focal length, is that what this is? That's okay. Actually, it's working. It's not even clipping into it right now. So let's do this. If I do this. Yeah, like so a lot of stuff got fixed by default in Blender, but it used to be the case that if you started going in like this, you would go through it. But now I guess it understands that this is a solid object and that you don't wanna necessarily do that. Actually, yeah. So you see, like here, for example, like there's a huge crease. So I actually want it to extrude inwards as well. So I'm gonna do this. Okay, wait, so I'm gonna come in here, rotate like this, and then I'm gonna select these two, and then I'm gonna extrude them. Yeah, so it's interesting, like it's morphing the object in some weird way. Let's see. If I just select one, what happens? Yeah, it definitely doesn't work. See if I extrude a bunch. Yeah, I mean, it's giving way too many artifacts. I'll figure that out later.
Working at like 1. And now when I zoom into the donut, it's selected, and we're going to go add modifier. Here's a kilo of video. Hey, we're making good time.
Okay, wait, so in the Solidify,
I want to move because you can see
there's an offset here somewhere, it should be. Okay, so this made it even bigger and even less real. Oh wow, okay, what is this donut? Okay, I wouldn't eat a donut that looked like this. This feels too thick for me. So let's reduce this offset to something a bit more. Oh, I see. So before the offset was so small, it was like clipping through the mesh. Okay, so I think we figured that part out. So how about we make it like this? So this should be... Yeah, I'll make it as small, thick. Okay. Yeah, it is a thick donut. Okay, wait. So I'm gonna do it like this. Okay. So it's still pretty thick, I would say, but I think for now this should be fine. I do want to show you how the rest of the stuff works.
Like on the
yeah. So here, what does he do again? Let me remember.
Or edit mode, select all. One cut is fine for what we need it. The one thing we do want to change is you'll see like it modifier is doing, like it's smoothing it out, but it's doing it on a
this is a Middle Eastern donut. Thick donut. Okay, so let's go back here. So if we go back to the icing, what I want to do is I want to, let's see.
Mesh level and to change. The people in the comment.
Oh, he did make it drip here.
And then if I pull it down, you'll see that it is sticking to the face. But I don't want just that.
Oh, I see. How do you do that again? Yeah, so you see here, so he selects the whole line, and then if you invert, it selects everything except that line. So there's a bunch of better stuff that he does to sort of make the cover a bit more realistic. Because like this drip, I don't think is particularly realistic. You wouldn't see, I think, a drip that's this big. I guess it depends like who put the donut on. But let me just show you this thing. So let's say if I click Alt and click, then I can just move this whole thing like this. This looks like cheese at this point. Okay. Anyway, like this is all fine and good. Like we missed it, but I don't think it's gonna make that big of a difference.
The more I think, and don't copy what I'm doing now, but I'm just showing you like that's a huge face there. So, and so it actually dribbled down the company. You know, wet, and it just formed.
Wait, yeah, this is interesting.
I think real icing would look like that. Like things look less weird than they currently do. We'll get to that next. But one final thing before we get to the next part is you'll see that like the edge of this, like drip here, like all the way around it, like it's kind of like it's wrapping into itself, even though I don't think real icing would look like that. Like this part here wouldn't be like a complete glob unless it was like just wet and it just formed. You would see that kind of rolling fall off there.
Is there an angle that's flattering?
Is right here on the Solidify thing, we can actually create a crease on the inner part of it, and it will make it look like it's hugging the donut underneath it a lot better. And immediately when you do that, the icing looks just immediately way better. So there we go. It looks just immediate.
Yeah, I think what I can do is like I can, let's see. So I come in here and then I'm gonna click on the icing. So I select the icing and then I come in. Okay, yeah, so sorry, I don't mean to grab the whole thing. I want to grab these edges, and then you can see how you can sort of just move that individual part, like make it longer or stretch it or whatever. My droops are defying gravity. Yeah, like which ones in particular? I think they're all defying gravity as far as I can tell. Or was it, the back ones here? Or is this? I didn't notice those. Oh my god, what is this? Yeah, so actually one interesting thing I found is often like when you're dragging something from one angle, it looks really off in a different angle. So I think that's what happened there. You wouldn't eat a donut like this? Okay, wait. So let's try this again. Okay, so donut, select. Where's the donut? Oh wow, they look horrible. Oh my god, okay. Let's try to just get rid of these. Alright, so this, yeah. Let's say chocolate chunks. Yeah, I mean, like we can say that, but then I actually need to come up with a good color for it. So let me just, yeah, I think I'll get rid of it. Like, at least, come on. Okay, this one, I think, I can't say it's anything. This just looks like an artifact. So it's X, and then vertices, right? Okay, which else, like, which other ones look really off? I think this list looks really thick, I think, unrealistically thick. But that's fine. This one looks like, okay, how would it be thicker where it's drooping? Like this doesn't make sense. It should be thinner. That's fine, but it's just like, oh wow, it's so thick. Okay, I think like I'll just pick a flattering angle. Like I'll be like, oh, here's the render of the donut, you know, so you don't see all the imperfections. I just want one angle where the imperfections aren't obvious. Like maybe like this. There we are. Okay, we did it.
Way better.
Okay, so the other interesting thing about this stuff is that so far this has been like what like people call like modeling, right? It's like you have these shapes, you extrude it. Hopefully over time you become a lot better than I am at this stuff, and you can actually make stuff look realistic. So the next step is what's called sculpting. So in sculpting, what we're gonna do is you can sort of think of it like clay. Like let's say I come in here and you know, I'm gonna, you know, increase the size of my brush here. I think Shift F increases the strength. Oh, sorry. Okay. So first off, I want to select my actual donut, right? And so the thing we're trying to do here is that if you look at a donut, you'll notice how like they typically have this crease here, right? Like most donuts, you'll see like it sort of like almost looks like a burger bun of sorts. And like, yeah, you see here, like this has it as well. It's like lighter here. So the way we're going to get this effect is that we're actually going to push that part of the mesh in. But instead of doing it vertex by vertex, we're going to use a technique called sculpting. So with the donut selected, I'm going to click save. Why is this not working though? Okay, so first off, what I'm going to do is this. So I'm going to go back to my scene. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to literally copy paste everything so that in case I fuck shit up too much with the sculpting, at least I can go back. Not that like my donut is particularly important to salvage, but you can sort of do this. Like, so I basically Shift D, copied it, and then I'm going to select everything and I'm going to push H. So it just hides it. But it's still here, right? So then if I create like a new collection, I'm going to call it, I'm going to push F2, and then I'm going to rename this to old donut. And so then what I can do is I can click on this, click on this, and then move both of these to old donut here. Right, so then if I push H here, it should show. Where is it? I think Shift H, Control H. Okay, I lost my donut. How can you make an oven? Can you make an oven and bake your donut? Like, so a bit more seriously though, like I just want to show you the kind of stuff that people do with this stuff. So look at this guy. So let's say the same Blender Guru. And let's do the subway. I think that was his coolest animation. Like, you know, I'm struggling to make donuts, but like this is the kind of stuff that you can make. Like you would create these handles, you have the light, like you create like these realistic textures on the wall. Like it's insane, you know. Like, and then an animation would basically be you just like move the camera around. But yeah, I mean, like the thing is, like when I was making my own games, I felt like people said like, oh, you can just like download a bunch of assets online and use them. Sure you can, but the issue with that is that all assets that you'll download online will look like they're being made by different people. And so it's not a question of do they look good or not. It's just that if the styles don't intersect, it looks really, really bad. And no one's going to want to play that. So it's better to, like, even if it's shitty, I would argue it's better to make your own because at least the style, like the shittiness will be consistent. All right, so we have the donut, right? So I'm going to select this donut and then I'm going to go to sculpting. Okay, yeah, so it's working now. So you see how the mesh is sort of pushing out. So if I click control, I can sort of crease it in, right? So, but this looks way too strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and then F, and then I'm going to reduce the strength of the brush. And then I'm going to just sort of maybe increase it a bit more. So I'm holding control right now. Let me increase it a bit more. Fuck it, let's go. Okay, wait, no, I pushed that up part here. So, yeah, you can see this is sort of maybe looking a bit more like a donut at this point. So I'm going to keep doing this. So I'm going to just rotate. And hopefully this should look more like a donut in a second. Okay, how does this look like? I would venture to say it looks horrible, but you know, but you're my friend, so you'll tell me it looks beautiful. Okay, it does look better. Like, I mean, obviously you could think like, okay, well, maybe the creases are too strong. Like maybe you could do it in a different way, but this is sort of the main idea. Like, and again, like maybe I don't want the creases to be perfectly uniform because again, this is not a mathematical object. This was a baked donut. So it should, like, this is a bit more reasonable for what it could look like. So I think after this, like now that sculpting is done, we're actually gonna render this. It is beautiful. Thank you, Mazen. I appreciate it. I know it is. So what we're gonna do is, first off, I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna hold Shift A, and I'm gonna put a surface. Wait, I'm gonna put a plane. Right. So first off, let's make sure. Okay. So you see, my donut is going through the plane, right? So I'm gonna come in here, and then I remembered. So there's G, and then there's Y. Sorry, no, G and then Z. Yeah. Okay. So you see, so I'm moving it, but it's not moving the icing along with it. So what I want to do again is I want to click on my donut, click on my icing, and then I want to link them. But they're unlinked. No, what did I do? Okay, so how about... Okay, I'm just going to be very hacky. So I'm going to GZ it. Okay, first let me move the icing first. So I'm going to GZ. And then I'm going to click on this and I'm going to GZ again. And so once it looks like, is it floating on the thing? Not yet. So GZ. Okay, this looks a bit better. And then, wait, did the icing work out? Okay, so it looks like this. So what I'm going to do now is when I go to the plane, I'm going to go to the materials tab, which should be, where is it? Okay, there it is. So I'm going to create a new material, and let's say I'm just going to make this light blue. Okay, my beautiful donut. All right, okay. So why isn't this taking the color of the material? So if I say use nodes, let me see what he did.
How you solve the these sorts of
Yes, you see how nicer his looks? Like the creases look a lot more natural. But I guess like part of it is like I guess like anything artistic, like you need experience, you need to do it a lot, which none of which I've done.
All right, well, congratulations. Thing is that there's light. Add a plane, and wherever the 3D cursor is where new object, that menu for adding new things, and we're going to linked. We could select them both by hitting shift, and selecting them both like that. But let's save ourselves some time for the future as well and link these two. So we do that by parenting it. So the way you parent things in Blender is you select first the object that is the child of a parent object, meaning like the one that's supposed to
Okay, so this solves the problem how they were moving separately.
Shift, click on the object which is going to become the parent, the master object, and I'm going to hit Control P for parent.
Okay, wait. So so he said click on the icing, then shift click. So click on that, then shift click on the icing, and then shift click on the donut, and then hold shift P, Control P. Okay, never mind.
And then I'm going to select, you can select object or object keep transform. I always use keep transform because shift click on the object which is going to become the parent, the master object, and then I'm going to hit Control P.
Oh, Control P, I see. So I click on the icing, then I click on the icing, then I'm going to shift, then I'm going to click on the donut, and then I'm going to say Control P. Yeah, Control P. And then he said object keep transform. So now let's see. So if I move now the donut, the icing doesn't move with it. Okay, that didn't work. So let's see. So shift. Oh, wait a minute. So did this, maybe if the icing moves, is that what I did? Okay, yeah, so it did work. It's just I did it the other way around. So I made the icing the parent, which means I need to move the icing for the donut to move. Okay, it's not ideal, but like whatever at this point. So let me just make sure the donut here looks fine. I have a floating donut, very realistic. So let's say I put it like this. I'm sure there's a keyboard shortcut to rest stuff on. Okay, sure. This looks fine. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to color the plane. So sort of think of it like a kitchen top or something.
The master of all, the keeper of light and truth. Contact shadows was turned on, but it's using a rendering engine. Eevee is great because it will look like this. And that's going to use my graphics card.
Oh yeah. So let's do this. So this is going to look cool. So typically when you're rendering stuff, there's sort of like multiple techniques. So rendering means like, okay, well, we're taking these 3D models and we want to turn it into a picture or an animation. So we want to actualize the models that we have. So the default engine in Blender is called Eevee. So this is used more for real-time stuff like games. But if you're making like an animation, then you could use a different engine called Cycles. And so we're going to say we're going to use the GPU compute. And then where's the light? Okay, great. So we have some lights here. So if we go to render, what happens now? Oh, interesting. So that's the other donut we created, remember? Like the one that's supposed to be hidden. But like, why is it so pixelated? I think it's because the camera is very far away. But it did look like it worked. Like, I don't know why it didn't show it here. So what I'm going to do first off is I'm going to, like, let's say the old donut, I'm just going to get rid of it because I think our donut looks fine. The second thing I want to do is I want to move the light like sort of above this. So let's say I do this and then again, so I'm just using GZ again. So now let's say if and then the camera, I want to let's say I'll again use G and then Z it like this, and then G and then Y like this, and then G and X like this. Let's see if this works. Doesn't. I'm not even looking at the object like this. So I think there is a way to, if I push space usually. Okay, I like the, let's see, so G and then I want to, sorry, G and then Y, right? And then G and then X, and then G and then Z. So like this, and then G and X again. Sorry, Y. Okay, so I want the light to be close so that the shadows are obvious. And then now I just need to fix the camera. So let's say, okay, so yeah, the camera is way off. Okay, this is more obvious from this angle. So we're gonna G and then Y, I believe. Yes, like this. Oh wait, it's not even. What does this do? Okay, so I think there was a keyboard shortcut to do this in Blender where you could just make the render image be what you're looking at in the camera. So maybe that's what I need. Oh wow, okay, my camera's under the scene. I see. So G and then I'm gonna Z. Okay, then G, then Y, no X. Then let's say G and then, does this work? For fuck's sake, like this. So render image. Okay, that's not working either. Okay, let me see what, like, there was a keyboard shortcut for this, like Blender, camera to object, keyboard shortcut. Oh, okay, there's like a billion different ways to do this, it looks like. Oi. G. Let's see. Okay, so, okay, we have our donut. That's fine and all. Does this work? Yeah, I think this should work. Okay, we're close. So it's still very dark for some reason. I wonder why. I think it's maybe because the light's very far away. Oh, because the light is underneath the scene. I see. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, all of these issues have been entirely of my own doing. G, and then let's say put it here. So I put it underneath the scene again. So I click the light, then I'm gonna G, Z, put it here. Then I'm gonna G and then Y, let's say like this, and then G, make it a bit higher just to be a bit more realistic. And then so the camera, I believe, was close. So let's see what happens now. Yeah, so you'll notice now, like, because it's so close and bright, like it basically comes in here. And again, I think we still want the camera to be closer because it looks very potato from far away. But where's the missing donut, right? Like, because this looks like my donut with the icing. So then there's this rogue donut. I don't know where this guy is. Oh, I see. It's still this stuff here. So push X or delete. Right. So like this. Now, if you click render image. Okay, great. There's only one donut. You'll see here, like the material is fairly reflective, and because the light is right there, the blue looks like it's white. So let's put our camera just a bit closer. So I believe to make this work, we should go along the y-axis. like this, and then the x-axis, no, sorry, G, and then x-axis a bit. Does this work? Okay, so now I just want to bring the whole camera down, so I'll do G, and then I'll do Z like so. And let's see if this works fine. Yeah, so again, so we want to make it closer in the x-coordinate. Sorry, I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, because this feels extremely fiddly. Okay, I moved too far, so G, X like this, and then render image. Okay, so G, X like this. How about G, Y like this? Does this work? Okay, too much. And then let's say GX like this. Okay, thankfully we're not gonna have to configure this camera over and over again, but you can see it's already looking like a lot better. So I think, yeah, I think I got this. So let's say I G, and then like this, and then G, and then like this, then G and Y like this. If I render this image, what happens? Okay, so okay, now I just want to go down, G, and then Z, and I think this should be beautiful, right? Excellent. Yeah, we got it. Okay, I don't know, I felt it. So great, we have something that sort of, I guess, looks like a donut, but because it's so white, it doesn't look great. But you can see the shadows, first off, like, you know, we have this bright light, we have the shadow, so we have sort of the hints of a photorealistic image building. So let's make it even better, right? So like, let's say if we go here, and then if I go to the icing here, and I want to make a material for it again. So I'm gonna, this is the material tab, it is. So I'm gonna create a new material, and then I'm gonna make it like pink. Okay, so this is the shading tab. It lets me, wait, what's happening? Whoa. Rendering. Compositing, scripting. No. Yeah, here. So this is just going to show us what stuff looks like without light. So, okay, what do you think we can make the colors for the donuts? Any proposals? Like, I want the icing to have a color, and I want the donut itself to be maybe like a light brown. Any ideas for this? Or does pink work fine? Maybe a less bright pink. No, okay, I don't think the blue looks good. So maybe we do need like a bright color like pink, right? So what we're then gonna do is that this sort of right now feels a bit like I like chocolate. Oh, like chocolate. Let's see, what does that look like? I have to think about it, because I think one advantage of the pink, at least, is that it doesn't have to look super realistic. All right, so let's see, we're here now, and okay, so now we have a pink. Okay, so now we have a pink donut. And so what we're also going to do is, like, one of the interesting properties of icing is that it actually, you can actually have light penetrate through it. Actually, yeah, let me open up that reference image. Yeah. Oh yeah, good point. This is a good image. Yeah. So okay. So this is a good segue, because so this color is not just bright because of the actual color. It's also because, like, there's actually light coming in through this thing, and it's reflecting off of it. And you'll also notice another thing is that there's actually light here showing up. So the material is reflecting. So different materials reflect light to different degrees. So the way we control this within Blender is via a parameter called roughness. So here, so where is it? Roughness here. So you'll notice if you put a roughness of 1, it almost looks like totally metallic. So how about we just have like something like this, like so it reflects light somewhat. Not too much though, because then it looks weird. So let's say we put it like this, right? Because it'll take into account the grooves and shade it and stuff. And then the second thing we want is a Subsurface Modifier. So this is going to determine how much light actually penetrates through the thing and the color of that light. So let's say we want to make that color very reddish. So then let's say I make this. So this is like basically how much of each RGB color gets reflected. So let's say I want to make this like 0.5, and then I'll make, since I mostly want to reflect the red, and then the other colors I don't care that much. So now let's see what this looks like. So if we do go to render image, yeah, it's looking. This is looking slightly better, I think. So I still want to zoom in the camera a bit more. So let me go back to the layout, and then if I click on the camera, I want to go a bit more on the y-axis. All right. So then if I click render image. Okay, and I think I want to drop it so that I don't see anything other than the plane. So then if I click G and then Z, like this, I think this should be better. I just like double the size of this plane. That's like an easy hack. Oh, actually, yeah. So we know how to do this, right? So we just go scale S. I think I should reduce the light a bit. Yeah, so I think that's a good idea. So let's say if I raise this a bit, let's see what it looks like now. I think it already looks a lot better. It looks a lot more natural. So let's say I raise it a bit more. And then I want to scale this and just increase its size so that there's nothing else. I want to save that. Let's look at this now. Okay, amazing. So you'll notice like how it renders, like it starts from the center and then goes out. So great. So we sort of have something that kind of looks like a donut, I guess, with some icing. No, my icing looks like it's have a thick icing, right? I don't know who makes these. But let's go back here. So what I want to do now is I'm also like, so we have a material for the icing. I think for the material for the donut in the tutorial, he's going to end up having a more complex material for it, like something that kind of looks like bread. But for now, let's just pick something that looks yellowish, like breadish. I don't know. It's like a yellow, like orangish brown, I guess. Like what does bread look like this? And then we're also, let's say, going to have a subsurface where it looks yellow. Let's look at this now. That doesn't look like a natural donut. Thick. Yeah, exactly. The thick donut. Like. Okay, so how do I fix this? What color did the guy pick? Because this doesn't look like my donut at all so far. My donut's way uglier.
So I've got all via, so it'll stop at 32. I get my position, and then as a way to get into the next video, because we're going to start talking about brightness of it, is defined by the power. So you can increase the brightness right there. And I'll go with something.
Let's see. So I think he does the color in the very last video.
This just to make like a really quick render, and that's just to make it look a little bit bready, a little bit orangey yellow.
Oh, I see. So it's an orangey yellow. I see. So it's like closer to here. Okay, let's try this. Okay, now it just looks white to me. I don't see anything donut-y about this. Oh, increase subsurface a bit. 0.5. Let's say, yeah, I think like this. Should maybe just also fix the camera so it doesn't have to. So G and then the Z maybe. Not Z, I want to be closer, I guess. So G and then Y. G and then Y. Like so. I think the light is too strong. Yeah, I think I agree. Like, maybe I should move that back. Like, did I lose my donut? Oh, yeah, because it looks overexposed. That's a good point, actually. So if we go to the light here, we can reduce the power. So right now we have 1,000 watts. So maybe let's, to your guys' point, let's make it 500 watts and see it. We'll see what matters. What it does. It still looks like the same problem, right? Like it still feels maybe like 500 watts is too much. But it looks better. It doesn't look as grainy. So let's make it 200 watts maybe. Like, or like 250 watts. Boom. Boom. This is starting to look better though, right? Like maybe let me just make this 100 watts. Because it's such a close... let's go 50, fuck it. Oh yeah, now the blue looks a lot more natural, I guess. Do you think it's gonna work? Okay, now it actually looks dark, right? Like this looks like... But this looks like slightly dimmed, I think. The blue looks nice, but the donut, I feel, is actually kind of dark. So I think I'm going to do it to 100 watt. I think that feels good. So the other nice thing about software like Blender is you can come in, I can make this a sun, I can make this a spotlight, I can make this an area light. So you can sort of change all sorts of stuff, depending on what makes more sense. But I think point lights are the most popular as far as I know. Yeah, I think this is it. This is the money shot. I mean, so let's just try something. So let's say, so I'm just gonna save this. I'm gonna shift this, and then I'm gonna say many donut, just so that we get a sense of, I don't know, just having some fun. So if I come in here to the donut and icing. So I'm gonna shift D, shift D, shift D, shift D, shift D, shift D, shift D. I think we're gonna have floating donuts, but whatever. Shift D, shift D, shift D. Okay, what does this look like? Yeah, me too. I'm actually pretty hungry. Yeah, so okay, so you see, look at what's going on. So it's most of the donuts are actually underneath the mesh. So they're showing up like this. Most are floating donuts. But I think like it's probably like I don't know if you're doing a commercial or something. I would bet like they're actually using stuff like this. Yeah, very cool though. So I'm just gonna open up the don't save this file and then open up donut icing again. Okay, great. So I guess we have our basic. His looks so much nicer though. Why? Donut material. Yeah, it looks like we're using similar settings. But anyway, I think we finally have the sort of money shot, right? So the camera angle thing is pissing me off. Like I need to find a better way to set the camera. Because now it's taking all this time rendering all this useless stuff around it, which I don't care about. I just want to render the actual. Yours is thicker, which means better. True. Okay, so camera again. Yeah, so let's go. So here and then I'm gonna. Okay, this is a bit better. So if I go G and then X, I think. Oh, nice. Okay, we got it in the dead center. Yeah, that's what we wanted. So we have our beautiful donut now. It's the best donut you've ever seen, probably. And just like look at it for another 20 minutes if you guys like. But anyway, okay, it's enough. So I think what we're gonna do next is okay, so this stuff that I just covered is stuff that I saw over my birthday weekend while I was chilling on a lawn chair. So this stuff is new, so I'm actually going to be watching these videos now. And like I said, like where what we did was so far we did this, like the basics of materials, basics of sculpting and modeling. And now I want to talk more about texture and how we can actually make this thing look real. And I just want to finish off with the transparency just because I think that looks really cool. So yeah, I mean, like we'll be watching this. So if you have any questions or comments, like while we're watching, go for it. I'm gonna be watching it at normal speed. I'm not gonna be skipping.
Welcome to the next.
Is the volume okay, by the way?
Echelon of donuts. I don't know what that means. This is level 2. You graduated, guys. You made it. We're gonna continue learning the basics of Blender, but getting just a little bit more advanced.
Oh, by the way, if you want to laugh, you can see the fall off. Like, could you increase it a bit? Yes. Actually, I'll be right back. Just a moment. All right, I'm back.
As well. It's beginner, of course it's beginner, but progressing past the basics of the basics. So let's start with some sprinkles, because that is something everybody is dying you know, I've been reading the hashtags and the trends of the global Twitter, and everyone's just going wild for sprinkles. No, they're not. But let's pretend they are. So we're going to add some sprinkles to our donut. Now, right now we've got things in our outliner here. We mentioned the outline at the top right-hand corner. And they're all just kind of like thrown in here. We've got the archive, you know, which we created before we did the sculpting and everything. But it's all just kind of thrown in. And if we're going to start adding extra stuff like sprinkles and all this kind of stuff, it's going to get a little bit complicated. So let's just organize it a little bit. So I'm going to select my donut and my icing here, and I'm going to hit M for Mary, or move. It's probably
Okay.
better one, move, and I'll give it a new collection, donut. There we go. So this little checkbox, by the way, in case you're curious.
Right, so I'll do this, and then I need to switch it to YouTube. Like this. Okay, great. So yeah, so I think what he's doing is that first off came here to where the icing was, then he said move, and then move to a new collection. And then we're going to call this whole collection donuts. Right, so same, we're going to move this to donuts. All right, great. So now we still have the lane. Okay, so it's just like a way to organize stuff a bit. And then what's in this collection? Okay, so this is the camera and light. So let's call this camera and light. I guess we could also move the plane there. So just like this is like, I'll call this the scene, for example. And that way it's sort of obvious like what's actually part of the tutorial and what isn't. Okay, great. So we saved that. So let's keep watching.
It'll hide it from both the viewport and the render. So it's like disabling something almost, but keeping it within your scene. And then I guess I'll have one for my plane. We'll call it the environment. So I just selected the plane, M, new collection, environment, and then this stuff I can just rename this collection. I'll just call it cam and light, or lights, camera, act. I don't know. Right. So something like that. Okay. Whoa, what was that? Something just flashed on screen. Cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide the environment, I'm going to hide the donut, and I'm going to hide the scene, and we are going to add in our very first singular sprinkle. So if you look at...
Okay, so he's going to hide everything.
At reference photos of sprinkles. Let me pull it up here. Ignore my tabs here. I've just been watching...
I mean, yeah, like I would imagine a sprinkle looks somewhat looks like a cylinder. So like probably something like a cylinder. Right, and then you can scale it along the y-axis. Wait, thick. Wait, so there we are. So then you can scale it around the x-axis. I'm sort of guessing. Let's just watch what he's gonna do. But yeah, like I would imagine if you make it small enough, like let's say like a few millimeters long.
Theo Vaughn. Love that guy. So these are the sprinkles, and you'll notice that I mean, for one, there's no like uniform, you know, Confederate standard of sprinkles. There's just like all sorts. There's some that are shiny, some that are dull, but they all seem to have a very similar shape. It's just like mostly straight, but with like slight little like wiggleness to them. Some of them are shiny, some of them are dull. But anyways, that's the kind of overall shape. So you could start with a like a cylinder object to become your sprinkle, but they've got like a rounded edge. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a sphere. So we're going to go Shift A, Mesh, and we're going to go UV Sphere. Now by default, it's going to drop in this giant looking thing, and we'll set, yeah, first of all the size of it. I'm going to go to like 1 millimeter. Like really, really, really small. And then for the segments, the rings here, and the like basically the resolution of the sphere, that's quite important because this is going to be basically duplicated all over the donut, like basically like 1,000 times. So any resolution you've got here is just multiplied by however many sprinkles. Detailed, but also it's just going to like drastically increase your render times. So I'm going to go with 12 segments.
I'm curious though, why can't I zoom in far enough? Because usually when I push dot, it works just fine. Blender can't zoom in on 1mm object. Shouldn't be the scroller at the bottom. At the bottom. So I mean, I am scrolling with my mouse right now. It's just not scrolling all the way to that tiny size. Because look, if I say Shift A, for example, and then have a mesh, and then put the UV sphere, and if the default size is, I don't know, 1 meter, then it shows just fine. You can change number of segments. You see, make it finer versus make it. Is this a sphere? What is this? Have a potato sphere. But I mean, I want to go down, right? Like if I want to go to 1mm, I think it's something related with the. Oh, I can do that. Wait, let's go. If I do this. It was kind of cool actually. Yeah, okay. So I can see what the camera actually sees if I hit control and then 0 on the numpad. So this makes my life a lot easier. So I mean, yeah, but let's disable all of this stuff again and then like figure out what's going on with our sphere. Oh wait, am I just clipping in some sort of weird way? Oh, I think it's just some sort of clipping issue. Okay, this is fine. Okay, let's see. Can't zoom in close. In the 3D view, press N and oh, I see. Yeah, this is what I wanted. And then press N and go to view to make the clip start smaller. Yeah, view. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's clipping at 0.1 meter. So let's just make it at 1mm. Okay, great. Okay, we got it. So amazing. Okay, so this is, I think, going to be the origin of our sprinkle. So let's just see how he does it. So I think he mentioned a few things. So one is like sprinkles aren't uniform in shape. They're not uniform in color, and they're not even uniform in their opacity and their reflectiveness. So I think what he's going to show us now is sort of how to randomize these parameters and sort of procedurally add sprinkles on the top of the mesh. So I think we're going to be in good shape. And after that, we're going to do the thing I've been really excited about, which is making a transparent cup.
And 6 rings, so very, very low res. And that's the radius, and there we go. If we bring in the donut, you can see how this looks in relation to it. In fact, I might as well move this over here. Like that. Just one little sprinkle. The start of a sprinkle. And I'm just going front. Oh, hang on, front. Yeah, I should have put it along the front axis. That's probably easier to... It's like when I'm working with a scene, I like to like keep my camera like looking down the front angle, and then I have everything like positioned that way, so I don't get kind of like lost in which side view or front view, whatever. Anyway, so I'm just putting this on the left-hand side just for whatever. Just keep it here, right? Okay, so with my sprinkle here, oh gosh, focus it, number pad period. Okay, so we want it to look elongated, and so the way we're going to do that is obviously edit mode with tab. And then while we're in edit mode, I'm going to grab the top half of my vertices here, and you'll notice that it won't select the other side. So make sure you're in X-ray mode when you do that. So select the whole top half, and then if we would like to move it, like it would just, yeah, it would be elongated, but it would also be like tapered. Like it basically, we want to like almost like create like a duplicate, like a middle part of it. So we're going to hit E to extrude, which you remember was the same hotkey that we used to make those like dripply bits of the icing. So it basically kind of like takes that and yeah, like moves it up, but then like adds a space between it. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so we got one like that. And what I can do, because I want to make like that end that is kind of like the reference, of course, it's I mean, see if we can actually find a reference photo. Yeah, it's like, it's rounded, but it's not like as round as it is. It's not like a sphere end. It's just like, it's a hard cut. Basically, I watched video actually on how they do it, but it's like, they get like piping of like icing, and they just do like long lines on like a baking tray, and then they bake it, and then it just creates like baked icing, and then I believe that's what it is. It's just like baked icing. Maybe these shiny manufactured ones, they may be different, but yeah, you can make them yourself. Apparently they're really easy to do. Anyways, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this along the Z axis. So if I hit S and then Z, that's doing...
Oh, I see. Interesting. So do this and then scale and then Z. Oh, I see. So let's do this part, scale. This is a really ugly icing. Okay.
The effect that I want it to do. It's just sort of tapering it in a bit, like so. And then I'll do the same thing with the bottom one.
I'm curious, why is it scaling everything? I just want it to scale. Like, I just want it to scale my selection, right? So I want to come in here, and so, okay, first I'm just going to call this sprinkle. So let's see, I'm going to look at it head on with, I push 1 on the num key. And then if I click this and then scale and then Z, I'll get some lunch right now. Yeah, go enjoy. We should be at the translucent stuff by the time you're back.
SZ, and there we go. Look at that. One.
Vertex select, select face select. Okay, yeah. We want the vertices first off. So I mean, let's say if I just do these, for example, will it change? Because like no matter what, like, and if I select the whole thing, what's it gonna do? Yeah, I mean it's doing. Boing, 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 boing. Okay. SZ. Thick. Okay. So if I do this and then SZ. Thick and then if I select this and then scale. Okay, for fuck's sake. Okay, I'm just gonna have a cylinder, sort of sprinkle.
Singular sprinkle by itself. And while we're at it, we might as well go into shade smooth. And this is in object mode, of course. Make sure you're in object mode. Great.
Okay.
Now, with our donut here, we could, if we wanted to, we could, you know, grab it and like move it here, and then duplicate it, and then duplicate it, rotate it, and etc. etc. But I'm pretty sure the tutorial would be 10 hours long, and I would be receiving death threats from people saying, "How dare you lull me into a tutorial and then hit me with duplication. So there's a better way to do things. So there is, for something like this, you want to use basically what's called particle instances, which is where it's referencing one object and it's duplicating it over the top of the surface of another object. So that, we're going to do that. So I'm going to select my icing here, and there's the particle panel right here, and I'll move my little
particle panel, okay,
camera head out the way so that we don't block this view. Okay, so I just click. Oh yeah, by the way, I don't know why there's not a like new button, like the like materials there's a new button or whatever, but then like particles there's no button for like new. I'm sure that's a bug, but anyway, it's the plus top right button there. Click plus, and that'll add a new particle setting. And if you were to hit play, like spacebar, you would see that you get these like white dots appearing. So there are two types of particles. There are like emission types, which are like animated essentially, and then you've got hair, which are static. So now if I play, you can see nothing happens. So hair is the one we actually want, even though it doesn't look like it. For each one of these strands, we're going to reference that single sprinkle there.
Sort of looks like a metalhead, donut at this point. It's kind of cool.
Underneath render.
Render.
It's rendering as a path or a strand, which is great for hair for a character.
And there's an object.
In our case, we want to instead render as an object, and then the object that we're going to reference, this instant object, we're going to click this little eyedropper here, and the eyedropper allows you to just basically click any object in your scene, and there we go. Look at that. We have little single sprinkles over our donut. So the size of them is defined by this size right here. So this is really how you're going to decide. Got a bird outside my window. I'm not sure if you can hear that. It's going to decide how, yeah, like really, there's no uniform sprinkle either. Like some are like really like thin and like almost like, yeah, like little hair particles. Something like they're so thin, and then others just like thick and chunky. So really, like make the sprinkle that you feel best suits your needs.
Let's see.
Okay, so that's the scale, and then there's another setting here, scale randomness, which I normally would use.
It's interesting, like, so I can see it here in this, I can see the sprinkles, but I think what's happening is that they're being shown where the donut is instead of where the icing is. So I think that we need to fix. So first off, it looks like scale. Yeah, I like the idea of scale randomness. That way, like, different donuts will have different sizes. Different sprinkles will have different sizes. What about the hair length? Let's change this. Okay, and here I can change the total number of them. I think it would just take more time to render. I think the more you add. Why can't I see my damn sprinkles though? I think it's like just, it may be like an issue with how this is very thick. So maybe in the modifier for the icing, there was. So I see. So there's all the modifiers here. So can I make it less thick? Does this work? Whoa! Okay, we got the sprinkles. Okay, it's a lot of sprinkles, and they're white, so maybe I'll put less sprinkles. So back to the particles. I should think just have half the amount. Maybe 700. Let's try this. Okay, this is looking kind of cool actually. I'm enjoying this. Let me make sure that, can randomize the color as
By
well.
the way, this settings, like this particle settings and what I'm doing here, this is how you make like rocks across a landscape. You just like use this and go, and for this case, scale randomness is perfect because then you got rocks of different sizes. But it's also, it's not like shrinking them like just along one axis. It's also like it's scaling them. So sprinkles aren't, they're all like the same thickness essentially. So this setting actually doesn't work for us. A little bit, but anyway. The main setting I know you're all thinking right now is like they're all facing the same direction, so that's not good. So we need to change the rotation, and for rotation, you need to use advanced settings. Check the box. I don't know, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it shouldn't have even just be an advanced setting, because I've always used advanced settings, because you always need rotation. So anyway, check advanced, and then under rotation, we're going to check that box, click the little drop down, and orientation axes, we want to use normal. And it'll still be facing a direction, but it'll be a different direction. And you might think randomize is the one that we need right there. But randomize will, it'll rotate, but it'll rotate them on a different axis to the point that they're like standing up on top of each other, like facing upwards, which isn't right. What we want is this one, randomize phase. So when I do that, they're staying along like their same rotation, but it's like rotating along that axis, not the other axis. Anyways, there we go. Though having said that, I will use a little bit of random amount here because sprinkles, like they land on top of melted icing, right? And some of them will land like top on like that, and they'll like maintain a little bit of this rotation. So they won't be like crazy, it won't be like that, but they will have like a little bit of like tilt to them essentially. Great. So all well and good so far. One thing to note though is if we just hide the underlying donut, if we go underneath, you will see that we have sprinkles underneath our icing as well as on top. So this is, you know, in edit mode you can see it's one solid object, and right now Blender doesn't know that the sprinkles are supposed to go just on the top. So it's just placing them everywhere. So what we want to do is we want to define which parts are going to have the sprinkles, and we're going to do that in weight paint mode. So with our icing selected, object, weight paint mode. Or by the way, if you want a hotkey, Control Tab will bring up a pie menu with all of those options up there. So that's kind of handy. So weight paint mode. Now when you do this, it'll go blue, and essentially what you're looking at is, you know, like, what was the name of that movie with the aliens? Aliens vs. Predator? The one with the Predator. And it's like heat vision mode. That's what you're looking at. So blue means 0 weight. Now if I just click anywhere on here, you'll see you get like heat paint map. Red means 1, blue means 0, and then these values in between are obviously values in between. So the red values is where the sprinkles are going to appear. So if you try painting, it's going to be very slow, and that's because our particles are turned on. So if we just disable, click that little monitor thing there, it'll just disable it from the viewport. So now when we draw, it's going to be a lot faster. Okay, so the same hotkey, by the way, as
my sprinkles go?
F will change the size of your brush. And again, if you want to bring up that tool setting thing here, which probably should be on by default, but for whatever reason it's not, these are like the weight and the strength of your brush. Like you could go like a low strength and just kind of paint.
I think, yeah, because like let's say where the parts that would be dripping, you wouldn't necessarily expect to have sprinkles there, or maybe you would. I don't know. Think about it.
But anyway, default 1. There we go. Yeah, so I want to make sure that there are parts of it that,
Oh, interesting. I see.
Like especially down here, the sprinkles would obviously fall off if it was like on an angle too extreme. So I just want to make sure it's just on the top. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going too into too much detail for a beginner tutorial, but you know, I want the result to look good. And I've seen, you know, the past 3 years of people on Twitter adding me into their rendered result that they finished, and I had like all these notes. I'm like, you should fix this. This is too uniform. This is, you know, and it's like, well, I should have put that in the tutorial, shouldn't I? So you can choose a whole bunch of different properties that'll be So Control Tab, and then I'm going to go back to object mode. So bring back our sprinkles, and then the way that we tell the particle system to use that weight paint is by right down here underneath vertex groups. So you can choose a whole bunch of different properties that'll be right here. So, you know, we're going to get to that in more
All right.
variations to our sprinkles, some different colors and different.
Yeah, let's do the colors next.
This
That's
tutorial
interesting. Like, so I like this idea of having weight paints control some stuff. Like, you want to say, oh, like I want it to be really dense here versus there, because that's at a high level what you're trying to do, right? Because you don't want to be placing these guys individually.
series is brought to you by Polygon. Make better renders faster. Welcome back. We have sprinkles, but they are, well, they look more like Tic Tacs. They're all the same color. And what's the fun of sprinkles if they're not different colors? So let's change the color. So the color of the sprinkle is defined by the material of the single sprinkle that it is referencing. So that is the object mode. This little guy right here. So if we went, to the material panel and then we added a new material, and looking at our donut here, you can see if we made these blue, then hey, look at that, we have blue sprinkles. But that's not going to help us because they're all the same color. Now, we could duplicate this and make like a whole bunch of different ones with different colors, and that was actually the way I did the first tutorial 3 years ago, because I actually thought that was easier for people to follow. But the best way to actually create a randomized color set on your sprinkles like this is to actually do something with the material nodes and get a little bit fancy. So let's, at the top here, along the top bar, you've got an option which we haven't clicked on yet called shading. Okay, so shading mode is, by the way, these modes, they're just like screen layouts, like these layouts, and then it'll put you into a specific type of, like, this is just the 3D view, but it's put you into look dev mode up here, but you could go into like, rendered mode, etc. And then this thing down here, this is nodes, the node viewer for materials, right? So this is, you could find that in shader, editor, and then you've got object, etc. Anyway, make sure you've got the sprinkle selected, the one that is blue, right?
All right.
And what we want to do is we want to add in a control which will make it so that, this color here, this blue color.
That's right. So first off, we said, like, let's go to the sprinkle and create a new material. And we said, okay, we'll make it, green. And so if we go to render image, does this work? It does. It looks super artificial, but, whatever. Okay, sure. So now we have this in this node editor. So these node editors are interesting. So basically, it's a way for you to change colors in a language called shading languages. It's sort of its own thing, but basically you can imagine that like you're basically adding logic to change it. And I'm assuming so we want to just basically add some sort of randomizer here. I think it was Shift A. You can have like all of these different nodes, and then you create your shader graph, and then can get colors that you want.
Is randomized depending on which particle it is. So this, by the way, all these settings that you see here, the reason they might look familiar is that they are the exact same settings that you see over in the right-hand side. This right-hand side, this bar here with all the settings, it's just like an easier way to access it. To change these settings, but if you need to get advanced, that's when you jump over to the node view, which is where we are right now, which is, we're going to do some fancy stuff. So this base color, right? So we could put anything in here. You could put an image texture in here. You could do everything. The one that we're looking for is a node. By the way, I'm hitting Shift A.
Shift A.
And the node under input that I'm looking for is called object info. So I'm going to drag this in, and we've got a number of values here. So the way nodes work is essentially, if I take like one of these, for example, and I was to put this over here, it would, depending on what this node here actually does, it would take that value. It's like, it's like mathematics. It's like taking this value or programming, referencing this value in another place. If I was to take the random value and I was to put that into the base color, you can see that this happens. All the colors, all the sprinkles are now black and white and various shades in between it. So this object info node, this random output of that is basically every time the object is repeated or duplicated or referenced, it's giving it a random value between 0 and 1, right? Anywhere along there. It could be like one of them is like 0.325, 0.693, whatever. And depending on where it is along there, it's by default, it's giving it a white value, a black value and a white value. and it's just basically, yeah, it's like a gradient between them. So each of these are matching that. And that's well and good if you want sprinkles that look like somebody's dead relative's ashes sprinkled on the top. But what we want is something a little more lively. So what we can do between here, so where it takes the random value and it's 0 to 1, is we can put in Shift A, Converter, Color Ramp. So if we can drop in this color ramp here and put this in here, nothing will have changed at the moment. But what this is doing is it's taking the 0 to 1 and it's now transforming that across this gradient. And this gradient here can be whatever colors or whatever look we actually want. So if I made this black value here and I change this to be orange, you can see that we have this. So as you can guess, the next step is like, how do you want your sprinkles to look? And then how do you want to set this up? So in my case, I'm going to go with a sort of a pastel themed color scheme. And I'm going to go with like 5 different sprinkle color sets. So let's go like a blue color like this. And then I'm going to go a purple color. And then I'm going to go a hot pink.
Okay, so like let's say one yellow, then I'll add what did I change it? Oh yeah, like a instead of pink, then I'll add the blue, and then maybe a red, I guess. So let's just do the same thing. And red. Right, okay.
Color. And by the way, this is all referencing like stuff that I found on the World Wide Web. I've got a Pinterest board actually. I'll put the link in the description. But I've found like some like donut sprinkle looks that I like. And
yeah, so we can already see the different colors. I guess for us it doesn't look as clean because the camera's still far away. So let's just do that. So we want it to be, if you want it to be closer, then let's just go a bit down in the z-axis and then go a bit forward in the x-axis. Let's try this. Okay, this is looking better. So maybe on the y-axis a bit, and then maybe go a bit down on the z-axis again. Let's try this. That's cool. Okay, interesting. Okay, yes, this is what we wanted. So we want to go like this, go like this. Okay, finally the setting. Oh my god. Like this. Yes. Hey, Grandma Dino. Yeah, thanks for the heads up. Like, I've been like learning quite a bit because like Blender has been something that I come back to over time, but then never went really deep, and so this has been like great for me. Okay, yes. So this was the camera angle I wanted. Let's render. Okay, this is looking really nice actually, because like the size of it has been really small. Oh yeah, so I can already see a bunch of small imperfections, right? Like there's here on the side. It's more smushed up here, not so much on this angle. So I guess this is all stuff that we can fix later. But already we have like, you know, functioning sprinkles.
Yeah, the color scheme. But anyway, it's basically what I'm doing now. So let's add another one. I'm going to make this one yellow, and then the last one is going to be white. Okay, great. So look at that. We now have, looking at our donut, we have is that color. So this white value currently has no, I don't know, like nodes and randoms this into the base color, because everything else, like the roughness and all that kind of thing, that's going to be the same. Like those values across sprinkles, they're not going to change. It's really just the colors of the sprinkles. Speaking of which, by the way, we should probably increase the roughness of the sprinkles so that they're a little bit more like chalk looking, because that's kind of what a lot of sprinkles look like. There's also some that are shiny, so it's really up to you if you want to go for a shiny sprinkle or a chalkish looking sprinkle. But that's gonna do it for that. All right, now let's just jump into the next part of the sprinkles, which is you can see the next problem is that they are all the exact same size, right? And obviously sprinkles being sprinkles, no two sprinkles are the same, right? It's they're all unique, they're all special snowflakes. Some of them are a little bit bendy, some of them are like short and fat, and some of them are like almost nothing there. So that's what we want to create. Now, as I mentioned, there is, we can't use that scale randomness value. Crap, I just lost it. Oh my gosh. That's what happens to the sprinkle. And I'm going to go into toggle X-ray mode so that I can select the whole thing. And I will call this...
well, I think in my case it looks fine for now with the uniform sprinkle size. Let's assume they're factory-made sprinkles. So that's something I'm totally fine with, but like I'll still watch the rest to see how he does it.
So, down here, collections, instance collections.
Oh, I see. So just create an instance collection, and then you can pick one from the collection. Okay, that's all fine and good, I guess.
Sprinkles. Got a medium one, guy, and one of those loop cuts. It's the exact same way. Bendy sprinkle looking thing.
How does he bend them? I think it was Shift E.
Basic modeling here. So I just scrolled it up to give me like 2 loops, and then I just click, and then it'll ask you where do you want to place them, and if you just right click, it'll just place them right in the default middle area. And then I've got, a bendy sprinkle looking thing, right? And
oh, just rotate, I see.
I'll do the same thing. I'll duplicate my medium one here as well.
Dude, I just checked Robot Overlord Manual. Damn, so cool that you put all this great content out there for free. Appreciate it big time and hope that the streaming life goes good. Followed. I actually really appreciate that. Thank you, Gramadinho. I mean, yeah, so for me, I think the streams, I think writing was definitely more my comfort zone. But I think what I realized was ever since coronavirus started, I started spending a lot of time at home going over YouTube videos, because I still wanted to basically see people. So that's why I've been enjoying this quite a bit, and I'm just basically streaming myself learning stuff mostly related to ML and machine learning. But yeah, I mean, if you have any question about any of this or anything, even from the book, just feel free to ask me. I'm an open book. That's it. So if we go to the sprinkle, where was it? Select. Okay, so if I do this, will it work? All right. Yeah, so I guess I'll just show you guys this quickly because I thought it was interesting. So let's say I Shift A and then I add a cylinder. It's a thick cylinder. Let's scale it along all dimensions actually. So I do this and then I want to grab it. What the fuck's that? Whoa. I don't know what's going on. Okay, that's kind of cool actually. Okay, so let's say, because I think I replaced the sprinkles, I see. No, so I want to select the plane, I guess, and then, so I'm going to Shift A, and then I'm going to create a cylinder. Then I'm going to, okay. What happens if I render this? I think the cylinders are going to create shade, and I think this is why this is taking forever to render. Alright, so this is probably not the best idea. Actually, maybe let's just for the sake of this tutorial, I'll just create a quick new project. Yeah, so let's say, wait, which shortcut was he using?
Very basic. Definitely explain what I just did there. Oh no, is it gonna crash? I think it's gonna crash. It's gonna crash. It's crashed. Let's do that again. All right, we're back. Yeah, some people would just remove that from the tutorial, the part spread crashes, but I think it's a valuable lesson. Always save. Also, I will say that I'm using an experimental build. It's very rare for Blender to crash this often. Anyways, as I was saying, there are some bendy ones, so I'm going to duplicate this guy, and I am going to, yeah, create like some bendy parts. So I'm just like, oh, I should definitely explain what I just did there, right? So Control R is going to allow us to create a loop cut, right? Control R, and then when you click, sorry, first of all, you get that like outline, that yellow outline, which shows you where, yeah, create like some bendy parts. So I'm just like, oh, this tutorial series is
I pushed Control R on YouTube instead of Blender.
One here as well. And then if I scroll, yeah, some people would just remove that from the tutorial, the part spread crashes, but I think it's a value. I'm using an experimental build. It's some bendy ones, so I'm going to duplicate this guy, and I am going to, yeah, create like some bendy parts. So I'm just like, oh, I should definitely explain what I just did there, right? So Control R is going to allow us to create a loop cut, right? Control R, and then when you click, sorry, first of all, you get that like outline, that yellow outline, which shows you where the loop is going to go. And it's basically adding detail, essentially. That's what the best form of a loop is. And then if I scroll wheel, I can increase the number of loops, right? So this is just like some very basic here. So I just scrolled.
Oh, I see. Okay.
To give me like 2 loops, and then I just click, and then it'll ask you where do you want to place
Control
them.
R.
Just right click, it'll just place them right in the default middle area.
Okay.
And then I've got, you know, a bendy sprinkle looking.
Oh, I'm pushing G, by the way.
And then I'll do the same thing. I'll duplicate my medium one here as well. I'm gonna save as I go.
And I guess like the more of these lines you'll add, the more of these loop cuts, the easier it'll be to bend it in a way that's natural. Yeah, I think we can just get back to our donut. Like, don't save. Okay. Back to the tutorial. Donut icing, yes. So is this it? Render. Okay, yes. This is my donut. This donut is mine. It's the most beautiful donut. Even though this line, nope. This looks like it's defying gravity as well. I think it's what Kiwi was saying earlier. It's definitely right. Okay, so I think here is gonna.
The same reason that like it's actually art aesthetic important or priority. Seed here. Every time you do a new seed, like you might get like 3 or 4 spheres that just don't. Oh, let's just see how that looks. There you go, guys. That's the sprinkles. Thumb donut, right? Well, not that chunky.
Oh yeah, so I definitely missed the instance collection part, but you know, I don't think we really need it.
Painting on our donut.
Texture painting.
If we were to hide our icing here, and we just have a look at our donut in rendered view mode, we can see that yeah, it looks like a donut. It definitely our brain recognizes it as such, but it looks a little bit fake, a little bit cartoonish, and that is because if you look at real reference photos of donuts, you'll see that they're not one solid color, right? They are, you know, a darkish brown color, but as we mentioned when we talk about sculpting, when it sits in the fat and it's like in the deep fryer and it's floating, the part that is level is getting cooked less. So that part is always a little bit whiter. So it always has this like white ring around the donut. So as always in Blender, there's 100 ways you could do something. I know I've been reading the comments, people say like, oh, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it this way? Well, yeah, you can do things any number of ways. The original image, I did that with like a simple gradient. But this is an opportunity to learn a valuable part of Blender, which you'll probably want to use in the future for a project, and that is texture painting. So we want to actually paint on our mesh here. So there is a texture paint feature in Blender. So up here, the top, texture paint. Right. Now, to talk.
So first I want to go to my donut, then go to my donut, then select, then go to texture paint.
about texture painting, you also have to talk about a separate step, which we actually don't need to do for our donut in this case, and that is UV unwrapping. If you go to the UV editor up here,
UV editing, okay.
This will show you for your mesh. If you select all your vertices of your mesh, it'll show you your UVs. Now UVs are
okay, yeah, so here's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna hide this icing, and so now we just have the donut left, right? So then if I come here, I push L. So wait, do I still have X-ray mode on? So wait, so my donut, and that, yes, I'm gonna select it. I think there was a keyboard shortcut for it, so select all vertices. So Gamadino is saying, boy oh boy, I'm reading the Deschooling Society chapter and the depends on country of birth really hits home. I lived in Brazil my entire life, 0 answers back, 2 months in Portugal, and scored a job at a good software company. It really sucks. Any tips to the friends who can't come? Yeah, so I think this is a good question. So it depends. Like, let's say in my case, I personally felt like doing a master's was what really helped. It's not like the master's particularly taught me like everything. It's just that having it on my CV first week helped me get interviews at any tech job I applied to. I will say though that with the internet, sort of the game's changed a bit in the sense that like I think people are valuing prestige a lot less in tech, and they're valuing like competence and portfolios a lot more. So I would say like easy answer is, you know, have a bigger portfolio like on GitHub. That you can share with people. So if you're a 3D person, then, you know, or like, and if you're not just directly a software engineer, you know, just have a portfolio. And then I would say like try to meet people on Twitter and Hacker News, and use that as a way to get a job. So basically, a lot of companies now, because of COVID, are very scared about hiring. Like they don't want to spend cash, so they're just sort of waiting and seeing what happens. But if you can be the kind of person to just basically already do the job that someone wants to hire you to do by having the portfolio out there, then I think it's definitely a lot easier to get any job that you want. Obviously, a portfolio is hard to do, but you know, if you compare it to the amount of time that we spend in school, like I spent like 12 years in school total. 12 years plus 4. Oh, 18 years. Fuck. It's a lot of time. I wish I was homeschooled. Anyway, like let's go. So back to this stuff. So if you, yeah. So let's see. Why is this not selecting? Yeah. So if you see here, like, cool, man, appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, let me know if you have any other questions. I'm happy to answer them. So basically, as you can see here. The mesh here in 3D, we sort of unroll it and put it on a 2D plane, and then you can come in and you can color this part right here. So this is what UV unwrapping is.
The best way to understand UVs are with this image.
So you'll notice that our mesh has a lot less detail than his. I think it's partly why ours looks a lot more like a potato. Oh yeah, actually this is a good point. Like it is sort of like a wrapper for chocolate.
Yeah. Of this chocolate, it's like Torus in part 1. Blender already UV unwrapped it for us, so it's already pretty well good to go. Now, when we do our coffee cup in the next level, when we model our own coffee cup, we're actually going to UV unwrap it ourselves then. But for now, it's already UV unwrapped. The reason I do mention this though is that looking at the squares of our donut here, like if we, this thing drives me up the wall, but the clipping is always way too low.
Oh yeah.
The squares on our donut are obviously like square shapes, whereas over here they are rectangular, which would mean if we were to paint over here, essentially we would get like a stretched image look over there if we were to paint on a square image. However, if we were to start with an image which was rectangular, like stretched like that.
Wait, so select all vertices of shape blender. Let's select. Control left click. No, it's not what we want. I think it was a shortcut. I think it was like something like L or something, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, yeah, there we are. A. So now, like, this is the whole thing unwrapped, and this is sort of like we talked about the chocolate cover for something, and then when you come and you color this, like, this is how you can get the shape. And actually, like, by the way, if you look at texture files, typically in games, there are 2D files for this very reason. Like, see, like, this will be a texture, and then you want to sort of unwrap this on like something like a wall or like a monkey or whatever other shape you may think of.
That way, so it was like that, for example. Then and don't do this. I'm just to demonstrate. Then it would appear right. Okay. So, anyways, all this is like a prerequisite to say. Now we go to texture paint mode. The first thing we need to do is define the size of our image here. And this is where we're going to click new at the top, new image. And this is where we're going to set it up to be a rectangular image. So size of our image here. And this is where we're going to click new at the top, new image. And this is where we're going to set it up to be a rectangular image. So for the width, I want it to be twice as long as the height. So you could get out a calculator and type it in. However, there's a little feature in Blender, and that's that you can do math inside any text box. So if I hit *2, that's going to multiply that value by 2. If I hit enter, it's now done the math for us. Okay? And then I just need to give this image a name. So I'll call it Donut Texture Tutorial, and then I'm going to hit OK. And now it has created a rectangular image. Okay?
Okay.
Now, you can see that our donut here is purple and our texture is black, and that's because they're not synced. If it was synced properly, the donut would be black. In fact, anytime you see purple or pink color in Blender, like usually that means, unless you've set it up yourself, but usually that means that it's missing a texture. So purple or pink, think of that as like a warning sign that Blender is looking for something that it can't find. So this is not good. Now the reason it's doing that is because it doesn't have any image that we're painting onto in our material over here. So you'll remember that we set up the base color for our donut right here to just be one single solid color. So what we want to do is we want to swap that out to be an image. So if we went to our shading tab, which you'll remember we went to when we were doing the sprinkles, right here we want to replace this with an image. So I'm going to add an image node. So go Shift A, and then I'm going to go Input. Nope. I'm going to go Texture, Image, Texture.
Image.
Okay, so I add this in, and then what I want to do is take the yellow. This is like a short little tip whenever you're working with nodes. Generally speaking, one color only goes into another color. So this color is obviously going to go into our base color. Then the image texture, we're going to select the texture that we just created, Donut Texture Tutorial. Should be in the drop down. And there we go. Now if we go back to our texture paint tab, you should see that they would be linked. And if I was to paint over here, just do a quick little across it, you would see that we're now painting on our map over here, and likewise we can actually paint.
This is very cool, actually.
Side as well, and it will paint onto our mesh. And there we go. That's good. Awesome. Now,
Okay.
before
I love this.
Go another step before we start painting.
Okay, so just to explain what's going on here, guys. So typically in the shading tab, like, you would feed it a base color, but if we want to feed it a texture, like, we want to feed it a 2D file. And then once we start drawing on this 2D file, this will automatically come in and change this, right? So, let's say you want a donut that looks like this, like we'll call like a zebra donut. And so notice, by the way, so I'm just going to draw along one axis. If I draw it down the y-axis, you'll notice that this is rotating it around this part. Similar. So if I do this, it's going to give it a zebra pattern. So this is like if you're like at a very hipster place in Berlin and are getting a donut, like it'll look like this. But similarly, like let's say you do this, right? So this will be, so this will draw it along the edges, right? So then if we want the middle to be white, like really what we're going to come is basically we're going to come in and do this. But it's going to also have imperfections because we're drawing it by hand. So this is great. Like I love this. Okay.
Good idea.
This is new to me, so I don't know how to texture paint before.
Save our blend file, which by the way, good idea to do that. Always get into the habit of doing that. The image actually isn't saved with it. This image right now is stored in kind of like a temporary space. And if you were to quit Blender, you would lose any painting that you've done. So you need to save your image separately to your blend file. So I'm going to go Image, Save As. And I will just call this, PNG, whatever, save it, and there we go. So whenever you see a star next to the image, it means, like if I was to do painting here, it means that you haven't saved the image yet. So if you were to quit Blender, you're going to lose any changes you've done. So a quick shortcut is just Shift S whilst your cursor. Of course it doesn't work. Or maybe it's Alt S. Let me turn on, make sure that that's turned on so you can see what I'm pressing. N will bring up the panel here, and I'm just going to set a donut color like this. Now there's a fill tool, but...
Okay, so I'm pushing N to get the color, and then I guess we can come in here and start drawing on this donut. Something like this. This still doesn't look realistic. Let's see what he does to make this work.
It's going to collide with the white stuff I've already done here, and I don't know how to turn off the continuous thing. Anyways, I'm just going to paint over the top of it. So let's go strength of 1, and hey, why have I got some sort of lazy mouse thing turned on? Okay, I've got smooth stroke turned on. I guess that was maybe a hotkey that I pushed while I was trying to figure out how to say.
Okay, so let's see. So first thing, so F. So let's just do this full coloring like this. Okay, this is just lagging, by the way. This is not the stream. I think it's doing some crazy computations here. Just do this, make it nice and clean. Okay.
I guess that was smooth stroke. I'd never seen that before. Anyways, okay, solid paint over it. Okay, now we want to do that little white ring around it. And gosh, every area of Blender needs to change the clipping. It's so annoying. Anyways, okay, so I'm gonna set the color to white. Now, actually, I want to keep my color, my donut color there. If I hit X, which is the same hotkey as in Photoshop, it'll flip between the two colors in your palette. So that's just handy. So I'm gonna set this one to white, and I want to use a low strength of like 0.3, 0.2, something like that, because we don't want this white to be like blinding. Otherwise, it'll look like it's kind of just like painted on there really deliberately. So something subtle. And you'll notice we can paint both in the 2D mode, and you can paint also on the 3D model. So it'll update both of them interactively. It'll like sync them together. Now, one thing to note is that if we continue this around here, because we are drawing with a mouse, especially, it's going to be really, really obvious that it's been painted, right? Because it's a continuous stroke. If you've got a stylus, you can use pen pressure, and it's like a little bit better. But even regardless of that, it helps to use a texture to throw some extra detail in there that you're going to miss with just your brush. So you can use a texture mask. You would think you would use texture, by the way, but texture will actually use the color of a texture that you put in there, which isn't what we want. We want to use our original colors here, but we want to add like a stencil effect to it, and that's what texture mask does. I only just learned this myself. So anyway, we're clicking on new texture, and then down here, the very bottom, there's a little texture panel. And then at the top, we want to select from brush, mask, texture. And then from the type, because the default is set to image, you can put any image in there, but we're going to use clouds. So this is a procedurally generated texture that comes with Blender. It's probably the most common type of procedural texture you use a lot, basically. So if we paint now, you'll see that we get a very faint, if I just turn this up, just so we can see it, you can see we get a texture painted over it now. And you'll note that actually the more you paint, it sort of covers it up, but it still kind of keeps the same like tile to it. So actually what I like to do is change the mapping to random, and then like every time you press it, it'll be like a new kind of rotation of that brush, and it'll look a little bit, I don't know, it's just more appropriate for what I want it for. All right, let's turn down the strength again, and let's just do some painting. Also, we can change the size of the brush as well. Sorry, the size of the cloud.
Oh, interesting. I like this a lot too. So like you can basically pick up brush to make it more procedural. Like it's like all stuff to make this stuff look more natural. Does it look natural? the thick donut.
Cloud, so that it's a little bit more, yeah, it's a little more varied. But there we go. Cool. Right, now one thing to note, by the way, this is like at the seam of the texture. So actually, if I was to paint in the 2D space over here, like if I was to paint across there like that, you can see we get a seam. And that's because when you're painting in the 2D space, it won't continue a stroke over to the other side, right? It'll just paste it where you put it. But if you draw on the 3D model, then it will. It'll continue it across that side there. So when you come to like a seam, you just make sure that you are drawing on the 3D space, not the 2D space. Anyway, yeah, we just continue around it. This is the sort of thing that could take 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, depending on how detailed you want to go.
Oh, interesting.
But most of it's going to be covered up with icing. This is the kind of thing, it's the kind of detail that you'll notice if it's not there. But if it is there, you might not notice it. You know what I mean? It's like when you're watching a movie, right? Nobody notices the audio of a movie unless it's bad, that's the only time anyone notices or talks to an audio engineer is when they've done a terrible job. It's kind of the same thing here. It's like it's something that if it wasn't on the donut, it might look, people will go like, the donut looks fake, and they won't know why. But if it is there, they won't notice it, but they'll just say looks great. So anyways, that's kind of the look we're going for. Because I've got the original donut texture as that thing, if I hit X, then it's kind of like I'm erasing the white parts. So that can be handy as well. Also, you could paint like this, but that's just going to be dark. What I want to do though is set it to overlay, the blend type to overlay. And then what it will do is it will kind of retain the original color of the donut.
So blend type, overlay, and reduce the strength. Color picker. I mean, I want that brown, like, or that beige color. Yeah, so. It's just like adding some imperfections in the donut shape. Like some darker parts. Because I guess like when it's getting cooked, it may end up being like more cooked on different areas than others. So this is sort of to solve that problem. Make it crispy on the side. See, does this make it look better? So this is the stray sprinkle, by the way. I mean, so most of this overlay is not going to be seen because actually we have the sprinkles on top. So I guess what we can do is have it be on the side because I guess that's what's going to be the crispiest.
Save, it's done, and now if we go to layout mode, let's bring back our icing, and let's have a look at this. Or actually, turn off the icing, that's probably, there you go. You should be able to see the texture now painted onto your donut. And if you don't, make sure that your shading, inside your shading settings, you do have the correct image, the same one that you painted on, and or we could paint onto color and...
Okay, excellent. So I think we're getting pretty close. I may take a lunch break before we get back to the cup, and I'll do the cup today.
You can see you got all this like glistening bits that are sticking out, and like bumps and little crevices and dark patches and all that good stuff. And that is the perfect thing, not for painting, but for procedural texturing. So, with your donut selected, we're going to go into the shading mode, which is this mode right here. And by the way, just in case it's not, it should be look dev mode when you are in shading mode. And by the way, this, I didn't really explain what look dev mode is, but solid view mode is the same mode that you see when you're in like layout mode, like this view. And then look dev mode is actually using the Eevee renderer to preview your material that you've got active with an HDR. So it's using the HDR that's available here, which is basically like a template light and reflections for it. So look dev stands for look development. So it's the perfect shader for, previewing material so that you can work fast without having to set up lights and everything. It's just like, it's there and it's awesome. So when you go into shading mode, it should already be there in look dev mode, but just telling you in case it's not. Anyways, okay, so let's put that at the top there. And then here we have our node setup. Okay, so right now all we've got.
All right, so if we go here and then we said shading, material output, principal STF, the color ramp. Okay, sure.
It's just that image texture that we painted, and that's going straight into our.
Wait, so this is actually the shading information for the sprinkles. So now we want the shading information actually for the donut. All right, yes. All right. Back to the video.
Our base color there. So what we want to do is we want to add in a procedural texture. Procedural means it's by computer generated. So to do that, we're going to go Shift A, and then where it's got texture, you can see you've got a whole range of different textures here. Image texture was the one that we used before. That's obvious. And then the one we're looking for is noise texture. So we add that, and that'll drop this guy in here. And if we want to look at what this is going to look like on our mesh, the best way to do that is to actually use an add-on that comes with Blender. So if you go to Edit, Preferences, and then underneath the add-on section, search for Node Wrangler, and then just check the box next to it, and that will enable it. And then, once you've done that, you can Control-Shift-Left-click on that node, and it will preview it over your model. Right, let me just hide that stuff. There we go. And there you go. So you can see that's a model. And once you've done that, you can Control-Shift-Left-click and use an add. That'll drop this guy in here. That we're going to go Shift A. So what we want to do is we want to add in a procedural texture. Procedural means, and then where it's got texture, you can see you've got a whole range of different textures here. Image texture was the one that we used before. That's obvious. And then the one we're looking for is noise. This guy in here to actually use an add-on that comes with Blender. So if you go to Edit, Preferences, and then underneath the add-on section, search for Node Wrangler, and then just check the box next to it, and that will enable it. And then once you've done that, you can Control-Shift-Left.
Okay, wait, so nodes. Why is it lagging? Is it rendering something? Edit, preferences. Okay, this is lagging. I don't know what's going on. So I think we'll just like hook it up and look at what it looks like.
This tutorial. One thing to note looking at the donut here with this texture, And it's a very common down, which is the FAC or FAC. Right, let me just hide that stuff. There we go. And there you go. So you can see that's what the texture is doing. So that's the default like color input, but if you Control Shift click on it again, it'll view the next input down, which is the FAC or factor, and that's black and white. So what we want to do is we want to use this black and white cloud texture to drive the bumpiness of our material as well as the color and to contribute to it in that way. And it's a very common way of just adding like free detail to objects. But before we do that, one thing to note looking at the donut here with this texture, the texture is kind of stretched. Like there's more detail across this surface but less this way, and that's just because the way that this is mapped onto it right now. It's not using UVs or anything like that, but the
oh, just you see like
is by adding in a Shift A vector mapping. No, hang on. Texture coordinate. That's the one. Texture coordinate node. And if we just take the object output and drop that into the vector input, this is now going to use the object data, which is actually most appropriate for like procedural textures. Anyways, now that I've done that, if we increase the scale of this, we should see pretty standard detail everywhere without there being like more or less detail in different places. So that's good. Okay, so looking at this cloudy texture here, yeah, I mean, let's just set this to, I don't know, 300. That looks fine. And let's start by making this affect the bump of our material. So to use bump mapping in Blender, there's two ways of basically contributing to bump. There's bump, which is kind of like fake. Looks fine. And let's start by making this affect the bump of our material.
Object. I think if it affects the volume, it should do this. If we want the volume to be a bit bumpier on the sides.
That looks fine. And that's the one we want to use on our mesh. Now, currently we can't because we're actually in look dev mode and it's
displacement. And then they feed displacement to the height.
kind of like not showing us the detail very well, but in rendered view mode you can see with actual, it drive me crazy. But you're doing it just like this.
Oh, I see. Okay. How does this look? Yeah, so basically we're creating some noise and then having that noise affect the texture. Oh, whoa, this is looking pretty good. I mean, maybe it's a lot of noise, but it definitely makes it look like it's this thing that you can scrunch up. It would probably be interesting to do something similar actually for the sprinkles as well, because now that looks really cartoony relative to the rest of it.
This is actually the fake bump way. It would be the same as if you put it into the normal input, for those who know what that is. Underneath your settings, you want to change the displacement from bump only to displacement and bump. Before I do that, let me just Control Shift and save, because I am using a experimental build. Okay, there we go. So when you do that, what it's going to do now is it's actually displacing the donut. And hey, anybody order a porcupine? The reason is it's the scale of it. This is the height of the bump, that value there. The reason is it's the scale of it. This is the height of the bump, that value there. Way too high. So we're going to set this to 0.01. Let's see how that looks. There we go. So you can see now, looking at the edge of it, at the edge of the donut, it's actually physically displacing it. You can see that looks a lot more realistic.
Did it explode the donut?
This is with bump only, and then this is with displacement and bump. Now I think scale of 0.01 is still too high. Let's go 0.02 perhaps, or 0.03 perhaps, something like that. That's okay. And by the way, this is using the mesh to displace it. So it will depend. The look of your displacement will depend on the number of vertices that you've got here, the amount of detail. If you don't have enough detail and you want to add more, you can just go to the modifier stack and add in a new Subsurface Modifier. But anyway, another...
Okay, this was pretty cool. So basically you look at the texture coordinate, make sure that it has at every different point has a different displacement, which you then feed to the material output here. So this is actually pretty crazy. I mean, this is like, I'm sure like you can make it even look better like he did here, like the fluffiness, but I actually like the way mine glistened. It reminded me of the way like donuts are glazed. So I think it's fine. I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna go grab lunch and I'll be back online to finish the coffee tutorial.
And welcome to the final part of level 2, where we're going to be finishing off our donut. This is what we're trying to create, right? Like, we've got not just like small little bumps across it, but also larger bumps. Like, it's actually like creative, like from an artistic. Put that into the displacement there. Mix RGB, and we're going to drop this in right here. We actually want both of them, but we're doing a so that.
Oh, I see. So we're gonna add two sources of noise, one for like these like big bumps and one for little bumps. So you can add multiple sources of displacement. So it's like a more complicated shader graph.
It's going to be cooked more than before when we were using.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think so far this looks great. Like, I mean, obviously you can make it look even better, but I'm actually pretty happy with this result considering what I know about Blender. So I'm gonna go take a quick lunch break and I'll be back online to finish up the coffee cup. And thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back soon.